Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to you to the RICS Real Estate Investment Conference 2015 and this session on trying to find out if realty is chasing money or if money is chasing realty. Couldn't be a better time to have this conversation. KGK, I'm going to start with you, obviously, to set that tone. If we had a conversation right now with members who are actually constructing and building in the real estate industry, and we asked them if money is chasing realty, they'd be really shocked by the question, because the general view is that there's a cash flow problem and there isn't enough money in the industry.
Unfortunately, I would not agree with you. I think money is chasing reality.
Okay.
One of the reasons being that money today, the liquidity that is available has no other opportunity but to invest itself in real estate. Real estate is the only opportunity today which is secured but may not be easily liquidable, but generating cash flows today. No other businesses, no other industry, no other business is generating enough returns to investors. So today money in a way is chasing reality.
Where is the mismatch then at this point? Because most of the industry will complain that they're not getting access to any money.
That is because unfortunately there has not been much industrial growth in the country. All the other businesses which have been existing have not been doing well. And many of the opportunities, investments, businesses have actually attempted to shift abroad. So real estate has been the only opportunity where you have a proper security. Easily tangible security may not be liquidable. That's why money is chasing reality. The surplus liquidity that is available in the system is chasing real estate. But having said that, real estate is also chasing money for a different purpose. The unfortunate part in this is both are chasing each other. But no money is going into actual development. One side, money is going into real estate because it's generating adequate returns to the investors. On the other side, real estate is chasing money because it wants to replace, or they want to get into takeout transactions and replacement capital. So there is no growth capital which is going into real estate for development. So it is effectively both are chasing each other with different objectives.
Now, I want to bring in Sandeep here. As a developer at this point, if there is money chasing the market, is the problem the fact that the expectation of return is too high? Because you yourself personally don't believe that much in debt.
First, for your question, money chasing reality, reality chasing money, I think neither is true. I only chase the municipal commissioner and the CM, and the others chase me then. Also, one factual situation, what happens is, good developers are chased by the private equity guys, and the bad developers chase the private equity guys. So that's how the cycle flows. But the fact of the matter is, everyone's become very, very cautious in this market. Everyone's burned their fingers after the 2006-07 cycle of investments. The builders who have taken money have become more cautious of how to handle and deal with private equity. You have to understand the base of when we started taking money, we were all privately owned, family-run businesses coming out from a very, very tightly controlled, regulated real estate, and we're coming into a new phase of real estate.
Michael, fixed return, is that attractive to a builder right now? Do you need more equity?
Fixed return has its place. More speculative, higher risk equity development has its place. So there's a mix. But the big overriding theme is that today, 10, 15 years on from this real estate investment cycle, people know what they're investing in and they know what they're investing with. I think that's what's making the differentiation.
Devesh, tell us this, if we pick up the fact that there are some builders that are attractive for various reasons to investors right now, are they enough avenues of healthy investments in the real estate space? Is there any in tier 2, tier 3 India that's attractive to an investor like yourself?
I think the number of institutional grade developers in India today is very limited. I think primarily we focus on execution track record. The other thing is just integrity and governance and what has been their track record with taking capital in the past. And I think every developer worth his salt has taken capital, whether it's debt, equity, structured equity, whatever jargon you use. Everyone's taken capital and their behavior patterns are now very obvious. So the question really is, how many guys you could kind of close your eyes on the integrity part and just take a call on the asset or the development. I think that number is limited. As far as tier 2 or tier 3 goes, I think some of the developers there might be very good, again, might be completely above board, but the depth of the market is where the question lies. As well as the basic practices to do business. You can't completely go against the tide there. So in terms of the buyers who come to buy, their payment mechanisms, whether they're backed by mortgages, etc. I think that is still a question mark in our minds. So while, you may just say that, as a headline number, mortgage penetration in India is quite low. But if I look at the tier 1 cities, mortgage penetration is very, very high. Anyone who has a meaningful credit score today can either go to an HDFC or an ICICI Bank or an SBI and can get a mortgage at good terms. So that's clearly where tier 2, tier 3 don't stack up in our mind.
I would slightly disagree with Nimesh. Investors have got poor returns not because of integrity issues, but there are other reasons, basically, approval times. Approvals take a hell of a time. So investors didn't realize that in a country like India, the approval times are not 6 to 9 months. It can be as high as 18 to 21 months. That is hurting your returns. Secondly, we also had inappropriate investment structures. We also had issues on policies, wherein from a domestic fund point of view, when you raise money, the government said the fund is a pass-through vehicle. Next year they said, no, you have to tax at the fund level and you have to pay the tax at the fund level. Then they changed it again the following year. From an international point of view, when you put money into an investment, you had a 3-year lock-in. 50% of the project has to be completed. Then they came and said, no, trunk infrastructure needs to be completed. Now, nobody understood what is trunk infrastructure. What do you mean by completion? Of course, a lot of clarity has come in. Everything has been eased. Lots of changes have happened in the FDI. So currently, as Mike said, the investors are relatively more mature. Everybody has become cautious. But having said that, lots of money is likely to come in and will come in because everybody has become smart and they think and they genuinely believe that they can make money in India.
How much of this will be dependent on bringing the end user back to the market? For residential at least.
It will be heavily dependent on end users coming back to the market. That's why I'm saying the developers need growth capital.
Yashwant, bring you in. What is your approach to this market at this point?
If you think of the long-term story of India, we are all betting on the demographic dividend. We are betting on the urbanization story. We are betting on people moving to cities and buying homes and getting jobs and being in those cities. So to your point about end users, that's what we're betting on, that there will be enough end users and those number of end users will keep on growing.
Specific cities that you're particularly bullish on at this point?
The easy cities to bet on are the ones which have the highest job creation, and the highest job creation happens to be in the 4 metros or 5 metros that everyone talks about, whether it's NCR, Mumbai, Bangalore, Pune, or Hyderabad for that matter. So we would, by definition, focus on the job creation because of the highest end users there. Now, the thing that we bet on then is which developer, what kind of capital structure, what kind of project, what kind of product will cater to the end user's needs the best. And our hope is that if we find the right formula for the right developer with the right capability, the right product with the right price point, and the right location, it is sooner or later the end user will come because there are enough end users, and those end users will only increase as the time goes by.
I also want to understand from the panel, and KG, I'll start with you. Given what we're seeing in the stock market right now, and we can't ignore the fact that these two markets tend to be related in some way or the other, and the outlook not being exceptionally bright for the next couple of quarters at least, what sort of an impact do you think it will have on sentiment within the real estate market and on cash flows and this business of one chasing the other?
I think sentiments are generally down. It's unfortunate that while the government's intentions are very good, they have not been able to get many of the bills passed at the central level, be it the GST or the language regulatory bill. Also, there is a global economic slowdown. But having said that, I think Indian economy is relatively very positive. It's only a question of time. I strongly believe that June, July, we should see a kind of a pick up in residential real estate. The commercial, the IT services businesses have already started growing, so the commercial offtake has been very good. So very soon the residential residential real estate also should pick up.
Sunil?
I'm personally quite happy to see the world chase, somebody chasing somebody. Chase is life, chase is action. Money do always chase real estate in a country like India because it is being seen as a stability, it is a sign of prosperity, it is a sign of, a lot of people get married by virtue of having his own home in this country of India. Now, the question here is that this industry was never been very organized and hence over a decade period of time, the sources of capital was all the time was customer advances. And now those sources of capital have not been only customer advances, but some little capital which developers could generate over a period of time. There were banks who were giving money to the developers for construction finance or to the land buying pre-2006. Till that time, RBI was allowing them to do a land funding. Then some of the housing finance companies. Post-2006, probably you've seen the foreign direct investment was allowed, domestic funds got raised. Then you've seen the whole lot of developers went public market, then whole lot of NBFCs came into picture, whole lot of domestic funds came into picture as far as the mezzanine funding is concerned. Net, the funnel available for real estate developer have widened substantially. Now the question here is that these risks associated with the real estate projects are different. And hence, this chase is looking very uneasy. The stage at which you chase money need to be recalibrated. There are people who never felt to have equity as an asset class in their portfolio from an investment point of view. But today, it appears that it is a compulsion because you do not have a cash flow, sales are slow, you can't really service the current cost of the SPVs, and hence you would like to have somebody an equity partner. I think that is a very bad reason to have equity in a portfolio. So my sense is that it is all about the risk, the judgment, the strategy, local versus national, residential versus commercial, long-only assets, mid-income assets. These are all strategic points everybody makes. As what worked with us is to stay focused on whatever you have believed. So I think active investment management is the name of the game. Specialization is the name of the game. Disciplined approach of investing is the name of the game. And I think that is the only way consistently for longer period of time one can only see money in this market.
Sandeep?
You know, we are a very optimistic bunch of developers ever. So after Christmas goes, we says, no, don't worry, January, February will be very good. फिर बोलते गुड़ी पाड़वा में pick up हो जाएगा. फिर बोलते नहीं दिवाली तो पक्का ठीक चला जाएगा. So it's been going on, but I think we have to realize we are in for tough markets. 2016 will be another tough market for us. And it's the earlier days of 2007-8 when there was a huge shortage, I think has disappeared completely. People have become very choosy of the projects they buy in. People have become very choosy of the developer they want to select their house in. So in the same month, you can have 10 launches, out of which only 1 or 2 will be successful launches. So it's a complete customer sensitization.
Expecting to see price correction in the other 8 or 9?
There has been a price correction. I think if anyone tells you that there's been no price correction, well, is not a right statement. There has been a price correction, but a price correction has been in pre-launches. It has not happened in projects which are getting completed or which are in like 80% or 90% completed. 80 to 90% when it's completed, a developer will never cut his price down because he's already sold 60 to 80% of his project. Secondly, the customer sees that the project is ready. He knows what he's going to get. So, you know, his date of possession, if he knows, if a builder says 6 months, वो वैसे ही customer सोचते हैं 6 महीना बोला तो साल भर बाद मिलेगा मुझे भाई. So, you know, he at least knows his time frame and he lives on with it. But there is a huge differentiation already happening in the market. Secondly, on the private equity fund of it, I mean, with all respect to all my colleagues sitting here, the risk appetite for the private equity players has gone. I mean, they may say whatever they want to say about risk and everything. The risk eventually ends with the developer. They would prefer to invest in a project which they know is more fitting in the rules and regulations. They know is the IOD there, with the CC there, or going to come. Your money which will be linked in your term sheet will be, if you get IOD, I'll give you so much money. If you get CC, you'll get so much money. But that really, from a developer's perspective, doesn't help. The only thing what RBI has made life miserable for us is they are not treating us as an industry. So every time when we have to buy land, we have to either take money from an NBFC or from a private equity player. Whereas in an industrial sector, if they want to put up a factory, out of the entire 5,000 crore project, the promoter puts in 10% and the balance, everything comes from the bank. Here it's exactly the reverse. 90% comes in from the promoter, 10% may you will get 1 or 2 banks who are willing to fund you. This is the complete mismatch in fund management for us. Then we end up borrowing money at 18, 20, 22%. There is unrealistic expectations from both the sides, and this mismatch has created a lot of chaos in the markets itself.
Anybody wants to respond to that? The risk appetite and the unexpected, the unrealistic expectations.
If you fundamentally see what's happened in the industry, the way I saw it in the last decade or so, used to be a cash flow game. So the paradigm shift has been, the industry has moved from a cash flow game to a product game. It's not that there aren't end users, and it's not that the product will not sell, but suddenly everyone's focused on saying, what does the customer want? Including the customer. And the customer is saying, whoever can deliver on my product, both what my needs are, what my price point is, and what my delivery time frame is the person I want to go after. So therefore, product, as Sandeep said, if there is confidence in the customer that he will get a product that will be within a certain point in time, prices have not gone down there, people are still buying that, and there is traction. So this fundamental difference and this fundamental shift is now what's going to define how all of us will have to approach the industry going forward. And in that context, we as a private equity player are happy to chase those developers, someone who's got good integrity, someone who's got good capability, and someone who's got good governance mechanism or sophistication in dealing with institutional investors. There is a lot of money that's out there which we want to back these people as long as they're focused on the end product delivery.
Sandeep, yeah.
Just a quick observation on private equity and mismatch between our developers' expectation is, we are not a factory. We don't send consumer products where we manufacture and we can keep selling it on a day-to-day basis. We have a particular product, it has to be delivered, it can be encashed, and only then the private equity guy gets an exit. Unfortunately, if the project gets delayed, both the private equity guys and the developers get into a soup because the private equity has a limited period of 5 years or 7 years or whatever, and the developer is stuck because his product is being manufactured. Unless the product is not manufactured, he cannot sell it. And then that mismatch happens between expectations, exits, and then this, whole conflict starts off.
My guess is that private equity and developer both need to be greedy. They both are greedy. If they're not greedy, they can't be partnership.
I don't agree with this statement.
Okay, so let me tell you that part. Both are to be greedy. The only difference is that there is something called as fear. So you start with a greed. At some stage, the private equity investor has a fear which supersedes the greed of a developer. And that's the point he would like to exit from the project, because developer is an eternal optimist. And probably he's into the business, and as Sandeep has rightly mentioned, the land is his raw material. So he would like to be there for decades and kind of things. So the risk associated doesn't really then get into the picture. So compulsiveness is another factor I have seen in developer as far as the partnerships are concerned.
Come back to the fact that Sandeep disagrees that developers are greedy. They're not?
Right now, I do think we only work for BMC, the banks, and whatever time left, the private equity. So I don't think we work for ourselves at all anymore. Okay, the amount of interest we are paying, the amount of servicing we are doing, and the amount of expenses we incur, there is no way. Whether you take private equity, you take bank or anything, it's all debt. Because everything has a fixed return, everything has a time period within which you have to pay. If you don't pay, you're dead. Either your reputation goes for a toss, or the project is taken over by the private equity guy, and then you're in trouble.
I just want a quick round of answers from all of the panelists on if there is money chasing the realty sector and there are some opportunities available, what would you like that one thing, that one change to come in that will actually make sense for everybody on the ground right now? If there was one improvement that you could bring into the market. KG, I'll start with you.
One of the improvements you need to bring in is, one needs to build a good relationship with the developer partner. One needs to be comfortable with each other. That is, I think, is the starting point. That thing is very essential for private equity players too. The private equity player today thinks that I'm obliging him by giving him money, which is not the fact. The private equity player wants to make money. He wants to return money to his investors, give adequate returns to the investors. So if you come there with a higher-handedness, there is a problem. while the developer will take your money, but having said that, he knows how to, figure out a way not to give your money back.
So I just want to say, private equity can be very pleasurable equity or it can be a very painful equity. It really depends on the developer's mentality when he's taking money from the private equity guy. End of the day, this relationship is a very, very strong relationship which has to be built and nurtured over a period of time. All of us initially have been very, very tightly controlled companies. Now we are moving into an organization where we need to have a CFO who knows how to prepare a report, who knows how to submit it at the end of every month. You need to have an operational guy who will go and tell them what has happened on the project. If they don't hear from you, they're more scared. Keep them updated, and I think you will have a better working relationships. And these things you learn over a period of time. So end of the day, irrespective of whatever, whether they're expensive, not expensive, you're taking a conscious call when you take money from them. So you better realize you have to return the money to them, and only if we return, we'll get more money back. So for the industry, it is very, very important that every developer realizes this, that money taken has to be returned. It's not for you.
Michael, do you agree it's about the relationship?
I think I'm laughing because you're bang on. I think 8-9 years ago, lots of people took money and they thought it was, one very close business partner of mine used to refer to it as free money. And, I think those days are gone. I think everybody realizes, or people who are going to succeed realize that it's not free money. But also definitely it's about the relationship, and there needs to be a relationship that's one based on mutual respect and mutual trust. So it's not about a private equity player screwing a hyper-tight contract that somebody can never make money on and isn't aligned. I think earlier on today people said, we need to be aligned with similar interests. It's like a marriage where there has to be communication, it has to fit together well, that both acknowledge to each other that there are some shortcomings and failures, and you have to understand that. And you only do that in a long-term relationship, and that's how you prosper.
There is a trust deficit today between the buying consumer and the developer, and I think that needs to be addressed ASAP, because it not only affects the developer, it affects the investor, it affects the return you generate. So I think in addition to these two things, as an industry, we all have to focus on the consumer, delivering what we talk, delivering it in a respectable time frame, and bridging that trust deficit where a consumer says, okay, when I'm putting 20% down, I'm not risking that capital, I'm just putting it down because I'm getting a better deal rather than buying a ready flat.
Okay, so to my mind, the private equity and developer relationship may be a hate-love relationship, whatever you can call it, but ultimately what are these two guys are trying to do to each other? The developer is looking at capital efficiency. The fund manager is looking at risk management. The developer is looking at more reward to his capital. And fund manager is looking at governance and disclosure and transparency. So if these two are so fundamental, so in our kind of investment management team, we give not the location as a first preference, but for us, it's developer, developer, developer. It is not about all the time location, but in Indian context, it is also has to have a skill set to develop those locations. So I think it is actually a chemistry between two of them. And where is this opportunity for a private equity guy to have a good organization? When the organization brings a business plan saying that this year I need to have 400 crore capital to acquire new projects, and I will put 100, where will I get 300 from? If there is a partnership, I think that really works. And I think we could see some of these things are like platform level partnerships, could be in a small way in the same direction. So I think that is the way I think this whole industry will get sanitized. There would be a good experience of quality and quantity of returns, and there is a place for everyone here.
I do think, to the tagline of this session about who's chasing whom, if we all combinedly chase the customer, there would be enough value created in this industry which would keep the developer happy and which would keep the private equity investor happy. So I think that's the bottom line, irrespective. The thing that there's one thing I would want to change. The thing that's always baffled me in this industry is, if you look at the last 10 years, the volume of this industry has gone up tremendously. The value in the industry has gone up tremendously. Prices have increased, money in the industry has increased. However, the delivery system, the number of contractors, the quality of the labor, the quality of mechanization, the quality of consultants and and brain power that goes into our construction and delivery process has not moved at the same pace. And land prices may have increased 100 or 200, 300% in the same paradigm. Our construction cost has not. And there lies in the real challenge of why we're not being able to deliver to the customer's needs, because we just don't have a sophisticated ecosystem that backs us, which we would have available in other parts of the world. If there's one thing I could change, and I would love to change, is if we could put more money in the development, if we could put less money in the land, we would do a much better job of chasing that customer.
All right, unfortunately, we've completely run out of time. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. It's been a very engaging conversation, and you've been a wonderful audience. Thank you.